Beneath our feet lies another world.
Why'd I have to be born a worker?
In case you haven't noticed, we Antz are running the show. We're the lords of the earth.
A world just like our own.
Okay, everybody, 6:15, time to dance.
Don't you want your 8-bit beer?
Call me crazy, but I have a thing about drinking from the caboose of another creature.
Suit yourself.
Z was just another face in the crowd. Until the day she came into his life.
Hi, wanna dance?
Absolutely.
What on earth are you doing?
You know, why does everybody have to dance the same way? You know, that's completely boring.
It's no fun. Princess Bala, the guards are coming!
You're a princess. When can I see you again?
Never. Bye.
No, wait. Weaver, you gotta switch places with me. This is the only way I can see Princess Bala.
Oh, boy.
Princess Bala! Princess Bala! Hey, it's me!
We received word that the termite enemy has mobilized.
This guy's crazy.
I am proud to send you into battle.
I'm sorry, into battle?
Now, destiny will make him a hero.
One soldier did make it back.
You're the guy from the bar.
Worker danced with my fiancée. Arrest him.
Hey, wait a minute.
Let go of me!
And it will take him on an adventure beyond his wildest dreams.
So he kills himself 100 termites. Then bada bing, bada bip, bags himself the princess.
I can't believe you tried to pass yourself off as a soldier.
The trick is not to panic.
And he's about to discover that the challenges of the outside world are the least of his problems.
I've been kidnapped by the village idiot.
I know almost exactly what I'm doing.
We will spare no effort to bring her back.
Look out!
One ant
See, help me!
will rise above it all to prove that he's one in a million. DreamWorks Pictures and PDI present
It looks like this is it. Just when I was starting to like you.
Antz.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? How you guys doing? Welcome back to another episode of Podio Commentary. And today, we're talking about the 1998. Can I call it a classic? Am I allowed to call it a classic? I think it's a classic. Antz. Yep. The Woody Allen. Why? That's still to this day, 27 years later, the oddest casting choice I've ever seen. Like, legitimately. Now, you're probably wondering, why are you talking about Antz? Really, of all the movies, why are you talking about Antz? I'll tell you why. Kids are on summer break. I needed to watch a movie to have something to talk about tonight. They wouldn't leave me alone. So I said, screw it, we're putting on Antz. And, you know, I gotta say, because we've already watched Bug's Life a number of times, this is one that, like, is definitely more, like, adult than what you would expect, right, for a kid's movie. It's definitely a little bit more on the adult side. But it holds up remarkably well. It holds up kind of astonishingly well. I'm not saying it's a better movie, because it's not a better movie than A Bug's Life. A Bug's Life is, you know, I still think up there in the upper echelon of what Pixar has done. But this one has a certain je ne sais quoi to it that I just find to be quite fascinating. And especially now that I'm no longer 16, which is when I first saw it. And now that I'm 43 and I've had that life experience and I understand a lot more about what this movie is trying to say. And it has a lot to say, right? A fair amount about eugenics, surprisingly, about socialism, about the means of production, who controls them, who owns them. I mean, it's kind of like a deep movie. And it's stacked to the absolute gills. With, or I should say thorax, perhaps, with star talent, Woody Allen, Sylvester Stallone, Gene Hackman, Christopher Walken, Sharon Stone, Jennifer Lopez, Danny Glover, Dan Aykroyd, Jane Curtin, you know, and again, Woody Allen is that choice where you're like, what in the ever-loving hell is he doing in this movie, and why does it exist the way that it does? I want to go back real quick to 1998. I want to tell you guys the story of how I saw this movie initially. It was like it was like a Saturday night. It was like 3 a.m. I was 16 years old. Okay, this is like mid-September 2000 and not 2000, 1998. And I'm just sitting in my room listening to Z100, which is the local, pop radio station that's there. And I'm listening to Z100, right? And I'm like, you know what I want to hear? I want to hear a Seal song. Okay. I want to hear like Kiss from a Rose. And so I just randomly call in to the radio station, and I hear, the receiver picks up and I hear Z100, I go, oh, hey, I would like to request Seal Kiss from a Rose, please. And the guy's like, okay, great. By the way, you're caller number 10. You win tickets to go see the sneak preview of Antz. And you get I got an anthill. They gave me one of those home ant kits, whatever it is, and a giant magnifying glass, which is kind of sadistic if you think about it, right? Why give anyone who wins that tickets to go see the movie and then also like the means of having ants and then also killing them? Sure, they're going to make the argument that it's just for inspection purposes. They're going to be like, oh, inspection. Hell no. This friggin' thing was all about, the trailer of the movie shows like when the ant gets eviscerated by the fire. At least one of the trailers did. Not the one I showed you guys. It just cracks me up, man. So I couldn't find anyone to go see this movie with me. No one I knew wanted to go see this movie, even for free. So I drove over to the theater. I sat down. I watched it. I walked out, and I'm like, this sure as fuck ain't no Bug's Life. It is not Bug's Life, but it had a different flavor. It had a different style. And that, quite frankly, is what Jeffrey Katzenberg was doing, Like, this is an 83-minute long movie. This is shorter than most films. I think most films clock in at around, 88 minutes, and this sucker comes in at 83 minutes. It's rated PG, and it's a hard PG. It's written, it was directed by Eric Darnell and Tim Johnson. Eric Darnell went on to go do Madagascar 1, 2, and 3, as well as Penguins of Madagascar. And I think that was the last feature that he directed. But those are all pretty big for DreamWorks, right? Can't say I'm the biggest fan of the first Madagascar, but I do like the other ones, And then Tim Johnson went on to go do Sinbad, The Legend of the Seven Seas, and Over the Hedge, which I actually think is a really funny little animated film from 2006. Then he also directed Home, which is, it's actually, I liked Home quite a bit, actually. And so then it was written by Chris Weitz and Paul Weitz, brothers in arms. Paul Weitz directed American Pie. I thought Chris also helped to direct that. Turns out that didn't happen. But after that, he went on to go do, I think the last thing he did, right now he's working on Murderbot. He's the showrunner. That's Paul Weitz, sorry. Paul Weitz is working on Murderbot. And Chris Weitz is also working on Murderbot, but also co-wrote The Creator with Gareth Edwards. And then did The Golden Compass. That was pretty good. And he also then went on to go do, he wrote the screenplay for Star Wars, or Rogue One. He co-wrote that screenplay. So that's what he's worked with Gareth Edwards before. But then he was also the director of Twilight, New Moon, which I find to be really funny because Paul Weitz at the same time had a movie out called Cirque de Freak, The Vampire's Assistant. So roughly at around the same time, kind of off topic, but kind of roughly at around the same time, these two brothers each had a competing vampire movie in theaters. And obviously New Moon went on to go make more money, but Cirque de Freak was quite good and wildly underrated, which I will gladly talk about at some point in time. So it's like the pedigree of people behind the movie are pretty decent. They've gone to have some interesting careers. And this is just one where it's like, how did this happen? How did a movie about a wildly neurotic New York ant, very similar to the wildly neurotic New York, zoo animals from Madagascar, if you're seeing a bit of an overlap here, go to how did a movie like this happen? Because the ant is in an anthill in Central Park, in New York City, in 1998. The last shot of the film, by the way, features the two towers. It features the two towers. It's crazy to me, like that it's doing that. And it's really funny just because of how obviously this was kind of meant to be an FU to Disney, right? Katzenberg had like led Disney during the animation renaissance, went over to DreamWorks, wanted to bring that energy, wanted to bring all of that to the table. Right? But it goes back a ways. We're going to talk about that, right? So it goes back a little bit, about like a decade. So the idea, the impetus, the core like concept of Antz actually began in 1988, back when it was in development at Walt Disney under a movie called Army Ants. And it was actually a completely different story. This was about a pacifist worker ant. Well, I mean, Z is a, no, it's not different, actually. It's the same. I thought I read public relations worker ant. Don't ask me why I misread that. It was a pacifist worker ant within a militaristic colony, already hinting at themes of individualism versus conformity, which this movie very much ties into. But its individualist arguments, when tied to conformity, are so funny because it's making the argument that the individualist, which, I mean, in any case, the individualism argument is better, but that denotes freedom, where the collectivist, or not collectivist, the conformitist part of it, in this case, would lead to certain death. If the individual did not interfere with the ending of this movie, the conformists would all die. Like, they would all drown. And this, of course, is after like thousands upon thousands of loyal soldiers to the Queen were sent to their deaths in what can only be described as a massacre, when General Mandible, voiced by Gene Hackman, who did such an awesome job in the role, when he ended up sending all of them in to die, like, I think it was an ambush. I think they were tipped off. I think the termites were tipped off. And then all of those people died. And at the end, it was like the enemy was destroyed. Sure, but then all of the loyal ants were destroyed except for one, this being Z. And it's, again, this whole element about, like, being like, how he kind of like led the way. It's such a weird concept of a movie. Oh, he becomes a war hero. And he goes home and he's like, like, it's so funny because they're like, wait, he's a worker ant. How did a worker ant become a soldier ant? And how did a soldier ant become a worker ant? And it's just like, again, there's all these concepts kind of tossed together. Now, this movie, though, I will say, was absolutely rushed because they wanted this to be in direct competition with Bug's Life. And so, if I recall, Bug's Life came out early 1998. And this one was going to be coming out in the end of 1998. In October, I believe, is when it was coming out. And so, more or less, again, having these two films come out in the same year, having these two films come out very similarly themed, although albeit differently, right? Like, A Bug's Life is absolutely, fucking Seven Samurai, right? Or Magnificent Seven, or whatever you want to call it, right? It's very much that. This is an entirely different kind of movie, a different kind of story, albeit much darker, much more cynical, not as nihilistic as you would think. But I'm watching it again with my kids. My kids, by the way, loved it. They loved it. Like yesterday I showed them Three Ninjas. They watched Three Ninjas like twice today. So it's really great that these movies that are like 30 years old somewhat are still being looked at in a way that is favorable by kids, I guess. Even though the older I get, I look back on Antz and I'm like, yeah, no, there's some pretty dark stuff here. What I also thought was funny was the Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin as the Wasps, right? As the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. That's what they were, right? The affluent white people. Oh, Mimsy, what do you mean? You're always such a bleeding heart, Mimsy. Now listen here, I like to, all the stuff that she's doing, she wants to like feed the poor. Oh, honey, they're poor, they're dirty, they're smelly. Let's give them some food. It's just like, I mean, it's such a condemnation on like upper Manhattan fucking like white culture. the wasps and stuff. This movie isn't subtle. When you're a kid, you don't know what it is. When you're an adult and you get the jokes, you're like, oh shit, they were definitely calling out quite a bit. But where this movie, I think, like has the biggest flaws is predominantly the fact that, for one, they cast Woody Allen, because like, what the hell are they doing on that one? Because this movie's horny, by the way. It's very horny. Not in an overt sexual way, but the underlying horny factor is there. All right. You've got you've got Sylvester Stallone's character, and he's like, hey, look at all them girls. I like them girls. I can't do a Stallone. And then, Woody Allen's like, oh, no, but I can't do a Woody Allen either. Jesus, I'm not even going to try. But they're at the bar and they're talking about it. And he's like, yeah, I want to go meet these girls, And she's like, yeah, but they're just worker girls, man. That's whatever. And then he goes there and he meets Jennifer Lopez's character as Tekka. And they hit it off. They become a thing because he's horny. That's what he wants. Even there's a whole scene with between Stallone and Jennifer Lopez, and he's checking her out and she does the whole, hey buddy, my eyes are up here, and he's just like, oh, and then he's like flexing, legitimately flexing like a bodybuilder, showing off his thorax and his muscles and everything else, and getting her all kind of hot and bothered. And then there's even a line in the movie. There's a line in a kid's film. I don't know if any of you guys remember the line when Z and Bala were arguing after they escape after they get out of the anthill, and he goes like, I was going to make you part of my greatest erotic fantasies. And I remember when I saw the movie back in 1998, and I remember when I heard him say that for the first time, when I was laughing at that for the first time, like, what are you doing? What are you doing talking about this in this view? What is this doing in a kid's movie? The nerdiest, most neurotic aunt is all like, I've got all these erotic fantasies and I was going to make you part of it. But then when you learn about Woody Allen and how much of a horn dog Woody Allen is, and I mean, this dude was a horn dog. This is something that makes all the sense in the world. Now we're just recently it came out that he had sent birthday letters to Jeffrey Epstein. Kind of puts a little bit of grime, a little bit of slime on this movie. But then again, all of his projects are like that. So that's, again, one of those things where it's like, was Woody Allen such a draw back in the 90s that Jeffrey Katzenberg had to asked him as a personal favor? It was a personal favor, by the way, to put him in this movie. That's the whole point. It was a personal favor to Jeffrey Katzenberg to put Woody Allen in this movie. And then Woody Allen came in, and then he more or less reworked all the dialogue. Because if you notice, the dialogue in the movie is very Woody Allen. It's like he almost wrote it for himself. That's because he did. He absolutely wrote all of his dialogue. He did a lot of stuff to tie into more of his own kind of neurotic mindset. And yet it works really well. It was really funny. It was really enjoyable. I can't argue about it. But again, going back to the other problems of this is that they more or less kicked this movie into high gear in 1996 for a 1998 release. And I don't know about you, but that's not a lot of time, guys. That's not a lot of time to do a CG animated movie. And there's a reason why when you compare visually Antz to A Bug's Life, Antz kind of looks like a pre-rendered, pre-viz version of how good Bug's Life looks. As Bug's Life here, almost 30 years later, stands up wonderfully. It still looks amazing because of what, Pixar was able to do. Antz was just like, we need to get this to the market, And so they even actually moved its release date up from March 1999 to October 2nd, 1998. Oh, I'm sorry. I was wrong about A Bug's Life. A Bug's Life came out in 1999. It came out before A Bug's Life. My mistake. I was reading my documentation here wrong. I for some reason thought it came out in early 1998, but no, it was 1999. So think about that. is Jeffrey Katzenberg in a way to get in there and bitch slap Disney, rushed this movie through development, through production, and then even moved up its release date. So where it would, by months in order to beat out the competition. And it very much did not do that. It very much did not do that at all. I think it had a budget here. It's reported here. The budget is $105 million. And it did $171 million worldwide. So it didn't even double its budget. I don't know how well this movie would have done on home video. I don't think I owned it on home video. I don't think I've ever owned this movie in any capacity. It's on Netflix right now. Hell, I recommend watching it. I honest to God recommend watching this movie. It's so weird when you look at it through the adult brain perspective, because like a B movie is very similar, about the individualism versus conformity, right? A B movie and Antz can go hand in hand. By the way, both DreamWorks, and both have the DreamWorks smile, and both are largely based around comedians from New York who also happen to be Jewish. Just saying, DreamWorks has a type. I ain't knocking it. All right. I like a B movie. And a B movie is also exceptionally horny. The B movie is also exceptionally horny. What is going on there at DreamWorks? What is going on with the horny? It's true, though. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point of this movie. Is that it's absolutely true that there's just such a weird level of horn. But I gotta say though, again, it's still really, really, really enjoyable. There's the scene where okay, so they go to the bar, and they're waxing political about life, and Z's just all like, why do anything? Why go and dance in a line because somebody told me to? Why do anything for anyone that's not me? Why not do what I want to do? Which is a theme that all of us kind of deal with in our lives. Why should we do what somebody tells us to do, right? That's bullshit. And then here comes Princess Bala. She's wanting to slum it. She sees him sitting there. She goes and she talks to him, and he's like, but immediately, as soon as a beautiful woman comes along and says hey there, stranger, would you like to dance? And he's all like, boing, 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 boing. Which whatever it is that he was saying. And they go off and they dance, and then there's a bar fight, and and it kind of goes from there. But then, he got bit by the love bug and he wants to see her again. So what does he do? He goes to his best friend, who happens to be a soldier, switches places with them in order to go to a royal inspection, just so he can get a look at Princess Bala again. Ends up getting sent to war in the front lines of this ambush. Everyone dies except for him. He returns back, gets exposed for being the worker ant, kidnaps the princess accidentally while trying to save his own ass. And then they get booted out into the open world, where they're then trying to get to Insectopia, where it's very bohemian. In fact, that's a line that even Christopher Walken's Cutter says in the movie when he gets there. He lands in there and he's like, oh, it's very bohemian. And it's true, right? It's the idea of that bohemian paradise where everyone just gets to live out their days doing what they want versus the duties of going back home and everything. And it's just it's really kind of funny. What I love though about that, about how they get everyone to kind of fight back at the end is, the workers, they start having that mini uprising halfway through the movie because they hear that someone broke ranks, and it becomes a legend, and it just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And that's always interesting to see. And then the workers are like, well, wait, we control the means of production. And I'm like, yeah, you guys are on it, aren't you? There we go. There's that nice socialist messaging. Let's go. There's a great line where the foreman is all like, get back to work. And then one of the ants looks at him and just goes, why? The guy's got no answer. He's like, I'll get back to you. He just walks away. I loved it because it's like someone's like, get back to work. Why should I? What does it matter? And it's just all the little elements of that social uprising thing. And maybe it's just kind of poignant today, You'd like to see, you know, the working class fight back against the oppressors in many ways, right? And I don't just mean like politically, you know, there's like socially, economically, all that kind of stuff, you know. But it's just always good to have a story like that, even if it is centered around an entirely extremely neurotic, very horny ant, right? I'm just kind of like laughing my ass off at all of this. You know, and it's like it's a fun movie. It's a very fun movie. It definitely does hold up. I really, really, really enjoyed it. What I gotta say though, too, is what I really liked about this movie is like the overall plot of the film. Okay, outside of the whole neurotic aspect of it, right? It's like, look at what General Mandible was up to. Straight up eugenics, right? Straight up eugenics. This guy was like, we are weak. We are falling behind. These ants are a menace. These workers are lazy. We need workers with strong mandible blood, mandible genes. We need to have a strong leader who can build a colony of winners. I mean, this guy was more or less like, let's go full on genocide. And his plan to do it was beautiful. He was going to use the ants to build a chamber that would go right underneath a lake. And then they were going to drown them all in one fell swoop, kidnap the princess, force her to become the queen, fill her with his genes, therefore putting out the nice Aryan ants, or whatever the Aryan version of ants would be. And that was going to be his plan. And it got thwarted because one guy got kind of horny. One guy got kind of horny. I'm just telling you. Horn saves the world. I loved it. I loved it. Is it better than Bug's Life? No, I've already said that. I'll reiterate that. Bug's Life is one of my favorite Pixar films. I love the story. I love the characters. I love the voice acting. I love all about it. But Antz can hold its fucking own. And I will absolutely defend that. But there are elements of this that are kind of funny as well. So you got like, there's test screenings that they did for this movie, like, you know, because those always play like a crucial part in like all these films. And one of them was held in my home state of Oregon, which is where I saw the movie, and for 800 people. And the audience, you know, said here that they, you know, what they say here? They said approximately 60% of the film was in complete form when this happened. The feedback was they highlighted the film's mature content, with one person noting that it was definitely mature and not for kids. Can't say I entirely disagree. Never mind, I just showed it to my 6 and 7-year-old. Due to its depiction, by the way, of alcohol usage, intoxication, severe violence, sexual overtones, and death. All of those things still in the movie, and all of those things are wildly hilarious to look at all these, because they go to the bar, they're going to be getting an aphid beer, drinking booze out of a bug's ass. And there's a line, I don't really feel like drinking, you know, out of a bug's anus, or out of the anus of another bug or something like that. So they talk about it. And yeah, the sexual overtones and all of this stuff is true. Like Danny Glover's character dies and he's just a disembodied head for a solid 2 to 3 minutes. It feels like it's probably shorter than that, but you know, it's like my daughter was watching this and she goes, is he alive? And I'm like, yeah. But where's his body? Like, you know, like, he's alive. Yeah, I know, but like he should be dead. Yeah. No. But is he gonna die? Yeah, he's gonna die. It's fine. You know, she's just like confused by everything. To me, it's really funny. I thought it was great. You know, and it kind of like I think this feedback reinforced at least the studio's understanding of the film's target demographic and its unique positioning in the animated market. So they knew that they had a more mature, more adult animated film on their hands, a $105 million budgeted animated film. But they wanted it to be something that would be distinctly anti-Disney. You know what I mean? And so, so it's like, we got to remember that how many times have you seen an animated movie or a kid's movie that has a joke that is clearly aimed at the parents, right? It's meant to go over the kids' heads. It's meant to do all of those things. And then it does. But the parents get the joke. The kids don't get the joke. I want to say like that is the majority of what Antz is that it's really just is like the kids not getting the jokes. But they really wanted to fight back against, whatever Pixar was up to. And honestly, like they've never fully been able to hit it. Even though Shrek is, I think, better than a lot of Pixar movies. I think all the Shrek franchise is better than a lot of Pixar movies. I think as a whole, the Shrek franchise, including the 2 Puss in Boots movies, are wildly better than a lot of Disney animated films and everything like that. They do make good movies over there at DreamWorks, but they've also kind of understood that their audience is something that is definitively not Disney, but it didn't, but it did okay with the critics, by the way. Antz received generally favorable reviews. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film actually holds an approval rating of 92% based off of 91 reviews with an average score of 7.6 out of 10. The general consensus is that the stellar voice cast, technically dazzling animation, not really, and loads of good humor. I mean, it had good humor in it, but again, aimed at adults. And then, there's like even Roger Ebert said that it was sharp and funny, not a kid's movie, but one of those hybrids that works on different levels for different ages. And that's very true. There's a lot there about society and conformity and individualism and dying for your work and not making your own choices in life and everything. There's a lot of things that went into this movie that, again, were like, you could compare it to A Bug's Life in many ways because, Flick, and he doesn't conform. He's an individualist. So you have similar themes on that front. But the way that they handled them in Antz, I do think is better than the way they handled them in A Bug's Life. But the story's also wildly different. The story of A Bug's Life is, it's like, hey, the grasshoppers are coming back. We need to fight them. We need to go and get the 7 samurai. Or maybe a little bit more appropriate would be like the 3 amigos, which is the exact same story. Okay? Just saying. But who doesn't love the 3 amigos? But this one is something a lot different. And I actually really, really, really respect that. And it's kind of had like an interesting, an interesting lasting impression. I think, I don't think people look at Antz and they think that it's terrible. I think many look at Antz and they think that it's like just different. But I gotta say, it's just funny to go back and look at this movie again with fresh eyes as an adult and just see all the things that went over my head and realize that this movie had something it wanted to say. It said it very well, but I don't necessarily think that its lead actor and the fact that the movie was rewritten with his voice and he did it along with a lot of the horn because he's a horny old guy. Dude's a pervert, like flat out. Okay. And I say this as a fellow pervert, but like, he's totally whatever. I think it's actually a pretty fun movie. I see some people in the chat saying they might have to check it out. I'm surprised more people haven't. This is one of those movies that I just kind of went like, I'll pop it on, give it a watch and talk about it. It's definitely interesting. I think like, it's a movie where when you watch it, you kind of look at the time it came out. You look at the, what was coming out at the time, what it was in competition with, who was in control, why it happened the way that it did. I mean, all of those things, really, really, really contributed to the overall, I don't know, kind of like awesomeness of the movie, right? Awesomeness of the movie, I gotta say. So anyway, that kind of wraps up today's episode of Podio Commentary. I appreciate everybody tuning in. This is, again, if you have suggestions for other films, let me know, because I'm always looking to watch new things and talk about things. And I'm trying to make this something we do very frequently on the channel. And when the kids go back to school here in the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to be a little bit more frequent in the middle of the day. Right now, it's a little bit different. And so I will talk to you guys later. Be sure to tune in for the Hollywood After Dark starting in 5 minutes. I'll see you guys then.
Sorry about that.